Okay. That's everyone? All right, terrific. All right. Welcome to the 33rd Ask the Chief Forum. And before we get started, we'll go through the exercise. Okay, there we go. So we're going to do 3 of these. 1, 2, and 3. You'd actually start to feel tingling in your fingers if you've been doing this for a while. Next, we'll do the bump, approximately hands 12 inches apart. And we will do 3 of these. 1, 2, 3. Wait a minute. Did it backwards?
No problem.
That's okay. Anyway.
More is better.
Playing a little catch up today here. All right. Start again. Hands approximately apart. Start to feel that energy. Anyone not feeling it, let me know. Okay, very good. Now, containing. We're going to be containing the forum, containing your space, your room, wherever you are. Also containing your tech. Starting now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to push that energy out. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So I decided that this forum I was going to deal with semantics, words that we tend to use through our lives that we really don't know the origins of, things that one would consider to be benign or harmless, that actually have some impact. And I think that the way that the system does this is that they really do full stock in words. So we're going to start with a word that a lot of us use that most of us don't really know the origins of. So I think one is conditioning. This is the first one.
The first one is conditioning.
Yeah. So Ms. A will give the definition of the word conditioning, the origins of the word conditioning. Sometimes when we're researching certain words and the meanings of certain words, they will branch off into something, I would say, more benign and something that is more directly what I consider to be the real origins. So, starting, you can go ahead.
Sure. So conditioning, according to 2 different dictionaries, one definition says a process in which a stimulus that was previously neutral, for example, the sound of a bell, comes to evoke a particular response, like salivation. For example, and then the next definition, it says the process of training or influencing a person or animal mentally so that they do or expect a particular thing without thinking about it.
Okay, so very good. And everyone has been literally affected by this particular process of conditioning. Now, the one having to do with salivation, if you're not familiar, I've mentioned it maybe a few times on past forums. There is, when I was in college studying psychology, one of the experiments that we studied had to do with Pavlov's theory. So, say we call it Pavlov's dogs. So, what they did to condition these dogs, literally to salivate just from the sound of the bell, they set it up where they would ring the bell and then present food to the dogs. And they did this for a period of time. And then after a while, they started ringing the bell and not producing food. But because the dogs were conditioned to expect food, whenever the bell rang, they would start to salivate. So when they just ring the bell, the dogs would salivate. And that is a form of conditioning. So the same with people. We are conditioned, or when I say I am not these days, but they condition, the system conditions people to do certain things just by either, sometimes it's just a musical tune or a tone or something like that, where folks would immediately start to think about certain subject matters or so on. Now, I know I talked about some examples.
Want me to go through them?
Sure, you can.
For example, you talked about for words, images, sounds, and smells. So,
Right.
well, I don't know why. What's on the top of my head is like colors,
Mm-hmm.
where they try to like villainize a color, black or red, or red is a stoplight. Red is you have an F. Red is the sex district, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it depends on what culture also that you're coming up in as to the meanings of these different colors, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So like in the United States, as a male, especially when I was growing up and through a lot of the time I was, my experience here, pink was not a color that men wore or males wore. But when I moved to Asia, you would see men wearing pink, and even from the conditioning that I had suffered in the United States, there was something, as soon as I would see a guy wearing pink, it was something one would say, oh, is he wearing pink? But I would catch that voice. It's like a fragment. It's like the conditioning fragments you into behaving a certain way according to certain stimuli or certain words and color. So because I'm aware of what's going on inside myself, why would I think that everyone is supposed to follow the influences of the culture that I grew up in? After all, they are different cultures, means that they're different. So the color pink didn't mean the same thing here as it meant growing up in the United States. Just really some, kind of simple stuff. Why would a color mean anything? And also, there's a lot of, I'd say, I don't know if you can call them disciplines, built up around colors. Even they talk about the colors of someone's aura. Now, my vision was more visual. I would see people's auras, but I wouldn't really necessarily see the rainbow of colors. I don't think I've ever really saw a red aura or a green aura per se. I would see literally yellows and whites mostly. Some have like a tinge of blue. And I would look through the books of programming that were going to instruct me on how to interpret each person's color of their aura. After a while, I realized that didn't really hold any real bearings on whether someone was an angry person or a passive person or a nervous person. What I was able to judge was the thickness of the aura, how far it radiated from the body, which showed me this person has more energy opposed to the person who has very, very thin aura. And even some studies years ago in Carillion photography, that individuals who were losing or was basically on the verge of transitioning out, or dying or passing away, auras get thinner and thinner. So that energy is feeding less of the avatar. The avatar is losing energy, or I would say that it's constricting. Because one of the things also over the years that there have been nurses who would talk about seeing a person transition and see an orb come out of that person's chest, sometimes out of the face. And a lot of times out of the face, and a lot of times go up through the ceiling. So I would say that the aura, the energy of, what people are measuring as an aura, their energy is constricted and preparing to leave the avatar. And then, so the other one was color, something that's very simple, like smells, and I'm quite sure everyone has experienced that. Smells connected to memory. So if you smell a certain type of perfume, a lot of times, if it's something you smelled before, you will relate it to someone that you knew, someone you grew up with. For instance, when I was a kid, they had these certain perfumes that older women would wear, and also not just that fragrance of perfume, that perfume mixed with the other person's energetic body odor. Now, it doesn't mean that some folks' their body odor will make a perfume that smells quite sweet, and one person's body will come off smelling, pretty nasty. And it'll be the same perfume. So anyway, smells, memory. Also smells, for instance, depending on where you're from, when I was a kid, if I smelled sweet potato pie, my mind would go to the holidays. And of course, I would get hungry too. So again, the system uses smells to a great extent. Restaurants, if you're in a big city, whatever, like when I was in New York City, you'd be walking through certain areas and they would waft the smell or whatever they're selling out into the street. And it will connect to whoever, is into pizza or into, Philly cheesesteaks or into just hamburgers or into barbecue, And to tell the truth, I'm not a foodie, but I like that tastes good. So it never really bothered me, but I just realized that also it would just, bring back memories as to, some time that was considered to be a good time. Sitting around the table with family units or whatever, having a good time on a holiday and so on. So that's another conditioning. And that's the conditioning that people use all the time. So what was the other one? Was it?
This one that came to mind was sound, like how they manipulate you in movies and scare you just by like adding this weird, like high-pitched noise in the back of whatever, and you're like, it's not even a scary scene yet, but you're like anticipating that something weird is going to happen.
Yeah, a certain dramatic tone, for instance, that really would telegraph something, scary is about to happen. And this is kind of a trick because there are movies that aren't that great and aren't that scary, but they would set up the audience by, this, kind of sound. And then, you're watching and you're already starting to tense up. And even some, once it goes like that, you'll jump just from the sound. But they'll have some really janky looking, made up dude or whatever playing some kind of creature or whatever. With me, I trained myself to observe these things without being affected by them. So it's a boom, and it's like, oh, okay. Wow, the makeup job on that guy's not really so good. But whoever's around, they leap out of their chairs. This is conditioning also. So as Ms. A was saying, sound, or again, music in general. Things about memories, oldies stuff you listened to when you were a kid, and so on and so forth. They play that, and then you will reflect back. Really, it's almost like it pulls you back from where you are, right back to when you were 12 or 13 years old, or whatever age you were when you heard that song, heard that music. So again, that's another form of conditioning to keep you from actually moving forward. realize that there's signals all over the place that are designed to keep your consciousness from maturing. So also just words like remember. Remember, remember, remember. And not so much as remember so that you can literally overcome something, but remembering just so that you reminisce and reflect and drift backwards into reflection. It's literally, again, sitting in a space where that one moment, maybe that sound was an escape. But at that time, you're in that little zone, your little sanctuary of music or whatever it is, or even the sanctuary of eating, something that you like to eat as an escape. But the reality of the matter, when you go back there, you're sitting in this little bubble that you feel you're escaping, but in other words, that you consider, I guess, your escape pod or whatever, which doesn't go anywhere. You're just basically sitting in a bubble. And when it's over, whoop, what comes in? All of that stress, all of the stuff that you're trying to escape. So that whatever you're doing, that's nothing to do with listening to a song, eating food, or even sometimes just there are people, and me included, I grew up in the country, and I really liked it when in the spring when the flowers and stuff like that, wildflowers would bloom. So you just stand in that area, times as a kid, usually kind of with individuals who aren't going to be, let's say, not the subjective, individuals who are going to make fun of you because you're getting into the smells of nature and all of that stuff. Now, when I was a kid, it was okay if girls did that, smell the flowers or whatever. The guy smelling flowers, what are you, a chick? Signals. Anyway, but again, let's see.
There's also like words. So like, for example, if growing up there was like an insult that people would tell you or relatives would tell you, immediately, even if a stranger just said the word, it just takes you back and makes you feel really weird. And I remember you were saying that density used people almost like a vending machine, push the right buttons and you get that type of essence.
Yeah, because certain individuals, excuse me, sorry, certain individuals respond to certain stimuli. So we're talking about words, for instance, and I would say anyone who's breathing air has experienced someone saying something to you as an insult, or something to just really shake your confidence, or just by calling you stupid or something, or calling you ignorant or naive or dumb or weak. That's a way of conditioning as well. So it may start with a family unit. Generally, that's where the ones that would hurt the most generally came from people that you looked up to or that you felt that you had trust in, and so on and so forth, who would at times do this. Or individuals that, as you were saying, that were supposed to be, nurturing parental type individuals that will, say things like you have no common sense, So they would pull you in almost like just to tune you up, and then set you up with a situation where they want you to build something or doing some work that you've never done, but they're not going to tell you how to do it. So they bring you in. Here's a tool, dig. So what am I digging for? Just dig. You're digging. Well, you dug it too deep. Well, you didn't freaking tell me. You're just, you don't have any common sense. You should have been able to figure that out. Which is literally, someone who's very, very dense, which there are a lot, of course. We're just setting you up so that they can tune you up to make you feel down. Also, the origins of all these things, the whole purpose of all this stuff is feeding. You feel down after someone does that. You could have gotten up that day feeling really spry and ready for the day. But, also, after a while, you even visuals like seeing a person will just bring you down.
Even someone who looks like that person. Like
Or someone who looks like that person. Yeah, there are individuals who get traumatized by someone who abused them. And years later, they think they see that person. It may not be that person, but it takes them all the way back to the trauma. So I'm not talking about this, obviously, so that we just sit with it and say, oh, that's just the way it is. The whole idea of doing the sessions and clearings has to do with removing the effects of these visuals, of these sounds, of the, visuals and sounds, literally, and smells. Just removing the effects. So, yeah, I can smell something that we would eat during the holidays as a kid, and I will remember, but I won't feel the desire to eat it because I changed my diet over the decades. So a lot of the things that we were eating when we were kids, they didn't know any better. The parental units and grandparental units, feeding us stuff that really, wasn't really good for us. Because one thing I remember when I was a kid that there are a lot of older folks who had diabetes, and in the family units, what they would call it from the grandparents, they call it sugar. So-and-so got sugar, And then later I realized what they were saying, that that person had diabetes. But again, diabetes, like a lot of things, are attachments. But if you're eating things of low vibration, it feeds the attachment. Because it's weakening your vibration, allowing yourself. In other words, it's like cracking into a nut or something like that. The harder the shell, the harder it is to get into that nut. The softer the shell, the easier it is. And generally, if there's something that's supposed to have a hard shell, even like chicken eggs, and the shell is thin, that means that there's an imbalance there, that there's something wrong, and you may not want to eat that egg. So, again, having to do with, like I said, just even seeing people, someone's face will cause you to feel a certain way. Then there's another way, but I don't even know if that's that great either. Movies where they make up the actresses and the actors, and if you ever saw them off the set on their day off, there may be some resemblance to the person on the screen. If you can just tune into their bone structure, but 9 times out of 10, they don't look like they look on the screen. Again, it's just something to pull people in. So the guy sees a woman and she's made up, really nicely made up, where it doesn't look like she's so fake, in her makeup. It looks somewhat natural. Then there's this attraction, this sexual attraction. And it goes the same way with women, looking at certain male actors who are made up. One of the things, tricks they used to do for men in the movies, they would do some of the makeup that women wouldn't normally do, like eyeliner. There's a little eyeliner here, or just a little touch of rouge, on the lips or something. All these things that we've been programmed and triggered into believing was pretty or sexy. Now, there's a natural, attraction for, I should say, coming from being a male, for men, women who have, to me, who are naturally attractive. Very interesting. I like seeing women who are naturally attractive. So what it means by naturally attractive doesn't mean that they have to have a certain shaped nose or a certain shaped mouth or eyes or whatever. And to me, if they're balanced, if their features go together. If they have a round nose, the eyes go along with their nose, mouth goes along with that. It's like, I guess it's an artistic way of looking at it. It's like that's a balanced composition. But also, genetically, to attract the opposite sex, men give off a certain scent, Again, also, physicality, you know, and shapes, if he's built or whatever. With women, the visuals 9 times out of 10 for men, nice defined eyelashes, the eyebrows, thick eyelashes, and a lot of women will have naturally thick eyelashes because that's part of the program of attracting the opposite sex primarily. Or shape of mouth, not necessarily color, but shape of mouth. So if all these things, and also ears, that's the whole feature. If a person's face is balanced, they could be bald and still be, very, very attractive. So, but again, there's a program about hair, and there are cultures that struggle very, very, quite a bit about hair and texture of hair as the dominant thing that will attract the opposite sex. So depending on whether it's very, very crisp or kinky, opposed to one's hair is straight, or someone's hair is wavy, or it's full, and all this, it's all superficial stuff to tell you the truth. In other words, it's just by design that we are programmed to respond to the superficial. That's what happens. Wow, she's really, really, really hot, man. She's, her face, her figure, and blah, blah, blah. And you get to know her, and she's crazy. And some, this is experience from people I've known in the past, will end up marrying someone like that, even though they said something's up about this person, I think she's a little crazy, but she's so pretty, and it makes me look good to have this pretty woman on my arm, but no one really knows that she's really crazy. So I'll put up with it for my ego and so on. Anyway, but enough of that. We can, is there something in conditioning that I might have overlooked? But if I did, I'll come back to it once we get into some of the other words.
It's interesting about when you say conditioning and about how people look and how people let the system define to them what ugly is. I think like every thought they think is defined by the system. Yeah.
Well, it's just just to add to it, because when I was growing up, and watching TV, weren't allowed to watch a lot of television, but we watched our share when I was a kid. That they were definitely programming people into what was beautiful, and what was ugly. And what I realized, it didn't take me. I was still a kid when it started to come to me that they're telling me that someone who I think is really quite attractive, skin color, features, balanced features, is unattractive because their features don't match this other template of what the system wants you to believe is beautiful, which is literally, I would say, brainwashing. But we're going to get into another word later, so I don't want to bring that one up prematurely.
I should go to the next question.
Sure.
Okay. The next word is media. One of the main, like you said, main avenues that conditioning occurs.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say, media is literally a delivery, what do you call it, a delivery service for, I would say, conditioning. It is their favorite delivery service for conditioning.
It's funny because it added also the word mass media eventually.
Yeah, because it spreads, it spreads to more people, and then they call mass media to do with them catching the attention of people internationally. And I'd say mass media in the United States, there were regional TV shows and so on and so forth. But when they started to just produce, movies movies and whatever. Anyway, movies and things like that, TV shows and music, and spreading it broader, because when what is called the United States was colonized, there were these different areas where people were into various different things. You know, because the French were there, then the Spanish were there, and the British were there, and they all came with their own thing. So they proceeded, as the system proceeded, to try to pull everyone into a similar mindset. So they used certain companies to do certain things, and Disney was one of those companies. You know, they produced, when I was a kid, they produced some the best animation that I thought existed at that time as a kid, you know, and it became popular. These stories became popular, the animation became popular, and it started to spread, got to the point where, there wasn't anywhere in the United States that people hadn't experienced Disney. And then from there, pushed it overseas, and folks started coming in, started basically embracing Disney. As a matter of fact, I forgot exactly when they started building these Disneylands in Japan, and I forgot what it is, I think in France, and all these, these different countries that have their own Disneyland. And I think in Hong Kong or some in China anyway. Yeah, that they have these Disneylands or Disney Worlds. And all of this is just to literally expand the programming and pull everyone into a similar mindset, regardless as to what their culture is. So depending on the country, they will offer certain types of food that are a little bit different from what you would run into in the United States, as far as like at Disneyland in the United States. One of the things I knew when I noticed when I started traveling years ago, that other food chains like McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken, I don't know if Burger King was as expansive as these guys, but they were basically buying franchises, and whatever the deals they make with these certain countries, they're able to get in there. And for instance, in Egypt, if you walk into, when I first went, this was quite a few decades ago, some of the things that they had on the menu was not things that they had on the menus in the States, because they were appealing to the society that particular fast food restaurant was in. So there were things that were more cultural on the menu as well. But they had to have the burgers and their fries. But side things, matched whatever that culture was into. So anyway, using food. Now, again, with media, I guess when talking about with Disney, that I got over to food, that again, media is a delivery process, a delivery service for programming.
Yes, and the definitions of the word, the origin of the word was really interesting. Like, for example, you can say certain words, and based on your inflection, you can tell kind of the intent of someone. And it's interesting because the origin of this word sort of shows the intent of media in general. And I asked Chief, Chief was telling me that sometimes words we use on a daily basis were once based off of a character, maybe in history, or someone that was known at a certain time, like I said.
Yeah, you had a certain character,
yes,
behaved a certain way.
Or something.
Yeah.
So in the way we spell media, media, but in ancient Greek, they spelled it medeia, which is implying schemer or planner, and is a Greek mythology character named Medea, Medea. She's supposed to be actually be a sorceress from the Colchis who helped Jason gain the Golden Fleece. And also another translation for the name in terms of meaning is to be cunning or to ponder. So all these things kind of show you that media has an intent that is different than what people.
Well, even when you were saying that she was a sorceress, again, smacks to what I've been saying all along, that the system is literally density itself. So Satanism is the system. What's behind the system? this satanic is dense, so-called dense magic and so on and so forth. So apparently in order to get, for the guy to get the fleece, she literally had to throw down some, some magic or whatever, or some dense magic in order to get the fleece from. And I don't recall the story anymore because it was years and years ago when I got to read about that. And I forgot exactly who he's getting the fleece from and so on and so forth, But the reality of it is that that word, talking about scheming, that's a clever way, when someone's scheming, they're finding a clever way to get something out of you. Or a clever way to pull the wool over your eyes about something, or get you to believe something that's not true. That's what schemers tend to do.
You want to say something else?
So we can,
Because should I go on to the next?
well, if you have something to add to the media, we can go ahead and stretch that out a little bit.
Okay. I didn't want to lose that one spot where you're talking about they're trying to get something out of you, because the next word that we have is entertainment. But before we go there, the last thing for media was, it's interesting to keep people from connecting any dots. There were other questions that other websites that were like, no, media doesn't have anything to do with that character or that woman or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just interesting. Go ahead.
Oh, Ms. Cook, but anyway, whenever you run into individuals who are trying to tell you that certain words don't mean anything, that, in other words, what the original definition or the origins, the reason that they would put the origins there before is that before the internet and easy access to information, very few people would go to the library and find out what the origin of these words meant. Because, you kind of have to plan your day around, going to the library and going, to the, what they used to call it, the card for the books and so on and so forth. And, going and when now you're just like, oh, let's do a search word for media on Google or whatever. And then you get a list of things that have to do with that subject or that topic. And generally we're saying origins of the word, then we find origins. But then we'll find that, wow, this one really, really hits home. It makes a lot of sense. But then you'll find individuals who say, no, that's not what it means. But they never bother to tell you what it really means. They say, oh, it means how we think it means right now. No, those are not the origins. That is what they decided that they're going to use as a definition, but because the system is into dense magic and all this stuff, they feel that they literally have juju words. And if you are susceptible, you will be affected by those words. You may be affected by a word that just mentions your ethnicity. And if they mention your ethnicity, you start to cringe, especially if the system is. Oh, what are they going to do? What are they going to lay on me now? What are they going to, how are they going to put me down now? So like a group collectively experiencing something and feeling the same way when even within that group, everyone is an individual and no two people are alike. So let's say, well, this group, they like to eat chicken. This is the United States. So it's great to get out of your country and travel. Because when I travel to Asia, Asians eat a lot of chicken. And they do it good too.
Mm-hmm.
Or another one, it's just density, being assholes. Oh, you like that watermelon? Watermelon. Y'all eat watermelon. I eat watermelon. I don't eat it like crazy because I got sick eating too much when I was a little kid. So I kind of moderate it. But again, what's the difference between liking watermelon and apples? And for me, one that tastes best to me is watermelon. Or a peach. Or, excuse me, a number of fruits that we eat here in Asia. And I never eaten before I got here, and now that's on our menu all the time, literally. Just as good, if not better, than a lot of the fruit that that I grew up eating. The limitations of plums, pears, and peaches and apples. and then watermelon on the side there. So when I moved to Asia, go to a Thai market. There's areas where watermelon galore. Nobody's got any stigma about it and say, let me pick you a good watermelon. Say, yeah, let me see what you got. Damn, that's good. Why is there something wrong with that again? Why is there something wrong with eating watermelon again? No. But anyway, moving away from that, what do we got next? Okay.
Okay, so we'll go on. I'll go on to the actual word meaning, and let's see.
The next thing that was interesting, the word entertainment. And entertainment, when you look up the origin of the word entertainment, it can take you in different directions. So one is in Latin and one is in French. And so the word in Latin was very interesting. It says, it's connected to a word called epilum or epule, I believe, and it says it is also connected to declension, gender, neuter, entertainment, feast, psalm, or public banquet. And when you said that media is scheming to get something out of you, and then this word has to do with public banquet or feasting. And Chief has always been talking about density feeding on your essence. It was very blatant.
Yeah. But even in, a number of the anime that we have watched over the years, even just the recent years, a lot of the animes talk about, especially if it's something that has to do with fantastical things and, and the metaphysical and so on and so forth, they're always talking about something tapping out someone's energy, feeding on someone's energy. So it's not so unusual. This is something that has been, there have been, I should say, segments who've been aware of energy and how it can be depleted and how individuals can feed on your energy. So what I'm saying is not original, having to do with, people feeding on one another's energy or the system itself feeding on your energy. So we said entertainment, talking about feasting. So you're watching these movies and so on, and it's opening you up to feeding. Whatever the subject matter is and whatever the subliminal messaging is that is going on in these films. And I guarantee you they all have subliminal messages, especially those that are promoted widely. Now, individuals who are doing independent films, who don't have the backing of a distributor, not so much. Because they're naively feeling that, all I need to do is put a good movie with a good story and so on and so forth. But even then, they will unwittingly be supporting certain societal or certain things that the system wants them to support because they've been programmed. And maybe even if their movies get to the theaters, the small theaters or whatever, or I guess go straight to Blu-ray or whatever, they're allowing it because because these folks are, even though they're not really connected to the big boys, they are playing the game within the parameters of which the system feels acceptable. So stuff like romance and there's a number of things.
Friends, family.
Yeah,
All the
romance
loaded
and
words.
yeah, all the loaded words. There's all the things that people say, what's wrong with friends? What's wrong with family? Family is okay if they're not feasting on you, but there's barely a family unit that don't feast on one another. You know, or friends. You know, there's a lot of ex-friends out there. This person used to be my friend. This is my BFF until whatever fragment comes to the fore, or whatever that person's tendencies come to the fore. You know, perhaps you are friends at a certain age, young people struggling to get your business together, or whatever it is that you want to do, and one of you start to get your thing off the ground before the other one does. Also, even in those situations, there are, I would say, attachments and so on that are in their feeding, because they like the idea that one person, we're all cool when we feel like we're on the same level, but then the other one starts to move up, and then this innate envy will slowly start to come in, or sometimes just immediately comes in. You know? And sometimes, not sometimes, always, one person is feeding more off the other person. Again, people feed back and forth, but there are those, if you have a friendship, figure out what your role is in that friendship. Are you the one that the other one's always basically influencing you to do this, that, or go here and there, and so on and so forth? One who literally is controlling your movements, which means if they can control your movement and your decision making or influence your decision making, you better be sure that they are feeding on you as well. But part of that is to see how much you will go for. And this branches into some other things that are connected to it, where culturally, when I was in my, late teens, whatever, and I would be very cordial with individuals. So folks within the same group that I was, being cordial to, I would inevitably run into some other guy who is sizing me up. The male pissing war, which is really tiring and boring as fuck. Really.
Women do it too.
And women do it in their own way as well. So first, they will do something a little out of, not really cool, but they'll see if you're going to let them off the hook. For instance, I have, a number of sisters. When I was younger, certain guys in the similar ethnic group that I supposedly belong to would ask me inappropriate things about my sisters. Hey, can you hook me up with your sister? I said, that's an inappropriate thing to say. Oh, come on, man, do me something. Hook me up. I said, why don't you go out and find your own, but don't come here and use me as some little punk who's going to deliver my siblings to you as playthings. Or, oh, you're a professional at that? Oh, I got this thing that I was wanting to do, and I think you can do it for me. I said, you didn't ask me if I was willing to do it for you. Oh, you can do it for me. I said, no. I said, I deal with, with high-end companies. I don't do stuff for private people. No, you'll do it for me. Literally, this kind of stuff. Just pushing to see who's going to dominate. And the retardedness about these particular individuals, they will push to the point where you literally have to find, I have to get the hell away from you, or else I'm going to have this desire to kill you, because they won't stop, because they're so damaged. Like all these people are damaged, but they all have their own flavor of damage. Anyone in any group can drive another person in the same group to distraction, literally. But anyway, that has to do with programming, also a certain type of programming to test one another. So for men who aren't into testing the pissing war, we tend to be loners. I always get better one-on-one because I can influence that situation to stay balanced. One, if there were 3 or more individuals, all bets are off, especially males, for me personally. There's a lot of guys who like to be in team, which has to do with their fear that they have to be in a cluster. you know, and in that cluster, there's got to be the alpha guy, you know, right in the middle. And the alpha guy, generally, he's only as brave as the situation he runs into. So anyway, with that, we'll move back to.
What you're saying, think about how media conditions people to, like, okay, say a friend is, like you said, they're feeding in a certain way where they are expecting you to do whatever, you know, you will do this, or you should do this, or I expect you to do this. And then eventually you're just like, whoa. But the media says, oh, but they're your friend. Keep opening up to them. They're your family. Keep opening up to them. So you're like, I guess I have to comply because I should.
Well, again, all these things go together because with that, we go back to conditioning by watching a movie. And they said, this is how a weak guy behaves. This is how a strong guy behaves. You know? So the strong guy, depending on the movie, is a brute. You know, he's going to strong arm the weak guy. And the weak guy, you know, they portray them as someone who just, you know, can't control, you know, have control over their lives. You know, they buckle and so on and so forth. But they very seldom will show you that a strong person is a person whose mind is strong. So they want this physical, you know, kind of back and forth thing, but someone who is mentally, psychologically strong never really has to like ball his fist or her fist up and hit anyone, because you're dealing with a low-level mindset when you're dealing with these people who have been conditioned to just be characters. I'm a strong guy. Look, I lift all these weights. You know, I run the ball. You know, I can dunk. Sports is sports. I played sports until I didn't play sports, and I didn't like sitting around watching sports. It was boring to me. Playing was fun when I was younger, and you know, get exercise and all that stuff. But did it change the world? In my concept of changing the world, did it make things better in the world? No. Just fed into all the aggression, all the competition, all of this other, you know, posturing and so on and so forth. Guys, you know, struggling with the concept of whether they're gay or not, you know. I'm into sports. Yeah, and you tattoo this guy's jersey numbers on your back. Now, you know, I mean, it depends, you know. Maybe they feel that that's macho. But isn't it kind of like when a guy tattoos his girlfriend's, you know, name on his arm? You know, I never knew any guy that, you know, I knew guys, you know, tattoo the opposite sex, you know, which, you know, tattoo mom sometimes. This is old time stuff. There's a lot of, you know, elaborate tattooing these days. But back in, during the time when tattooing was looked down upon, well, guys got mom, you know, on their arm with a heart or whatever, his girlfriend or his wife or whatever on his arm or so on and so forth. You know, always the opposite sex. Very seldom it's like dad, you know, grandpa, you know, always the opposite sex. So there's this confusion that goes on where these guys are tattooing the face of their favorite sports figure on their bodies. Seems kind of gay to me, but anyway, so whatever. Everyone has the right to do what they want to do with themselves. But anyway, Ms. A.
So the second direction that the word, the origin of entertainment can go. So I first talked about the word epilum, which was harder to find the connection in terms of its meaning is entertainment as well as feasting and all that we described before. So the next avenue that the origin goes to is in French, which is entretenir, sorry, and which also means entertain. So it's based, it also, the word originally meant maintain, continue, maintain in a certain condition, treat in a certain way. And later on, they covered it up and made it meaning hospitality. So they like vanilla
they like buried it under
Mhm.
hospitality.
We're talking about keeping something in a certain way. And that is absolutely what entertainment is in this world, is to keep folks tuned up in the programming of certain things like Ms. A mentioned, like, friends, family, romance, and, masculinism, being masculine, being feminine, a general concept of what being feminine is or masculine. So a long time ago, a lot of the movies were coming out of the West. So they were basically presenting their idea of what was masculine, what was beautiful, what was feminine, and so on and so forth. And what is the proper way, or what is brave even, you know. And what, considering conquest is something that was natural. In other words, the imposing on other groups was natural. That was showing your strength and your dominance. So they spread that. Let's spread that around. Now, over time, even with those influences, other countries started to really produce a lot of interesting film. There's a lot of stuff that came out of Asia. There were I watched a lot of Korean, dramas and stuff like that, and I got into a lot of Hong Kong stuff as well, just because of the action and just seeing how they did things. And I found myself gravitating from Hollywood to watching foreign films from these various different countries and cultures. How they were getting, how the West was safe from it for a while was that a lot of Westerners were lazy about reading subtitles. So if it wasn't dubbed, 9 times out of 10 they were going to watch it. And even in the West, for instance, Americans against the Brits. So there's a movie, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which comes out of England. But they did this movie some years ago with a number of really interesting characters, and I thought it was a very funny movie. And this guy who's American, I'm a film connoisseur and all of this. This is when he just first met me, and I realized that his concept of being a film connoisseur was anything that came out of Hollywood that was basically broadly promoted. So he wasn't really a connoisseur. He was just with the rest of the masses who, when they said, oh, Marvel's releasing another movie that won't be a blockbuster, sorry. And I think, yeah, if you can, please, sorry. While I deal with this. So even I found myself growing up in the States programmed that way also, even to the point where the films, the stories are just getting really bad, but they have a lot of CGI. And even when the movie came out, I knew that it probably wasn't going to be that great, but they were just promoting it and promoting it and promoting it. But I went, I didn't go to the movies, but actually I would wait till they came out in DVD or Blu-ray or something like that, and then watch them when, that was my way of protesting, but I was still watching the garbage anyway. But, excuse me for a second.
Also, the word entertainment is associated with, like we said, when they buried it under the word hospitality, but it also means to amuse or distract. It's interesting.
And I talk about distractions all the time. There's tons of distractions here. Again, movies, music, tech, even a distraction, just we would consider practical, is having a vocation or a job or a business in order to pay your bills and buy what you need to buy and invest in whatever into the game of the system. Now, this is how the system works. I will not tell anyone, if you're playing that game, you should try to play it well, because having a roof over your head is much more comfortable than sleeping on the street. And wow, time went flying by, didn't it?
Do you want to use the last word to sum it up, Chief?
Sure.
Well,
Okay.
when Chief was saying distraction, and he's already, there's the forums that if you go on the website, there's all these topicons, you can scroll through and find the one that is about the Matrix. So if entertainment is about us distracting you from the fact that you are in the matrix as a prisoner of the matrix, and the next word is programming, and the origin of the word programming.
Yeah,
Program.
we can go into programming when we get the next, because programming,
Okay.
spend a bit of time on programming, which, as you know what the term of programming a computer is. So when computers came out, the computer programmer, the one who's going to program a certain app to do a certain function. So in the same vein, through entertainment, media, and so on and so forth, they program the masses. Through the educational system, they program the masses. Now, it's not to say, oh, well, I will never do any of these things. No, you're in an environment where these are the rules that are laid out, but you can definitely stretch over time and break the rules and actually experience your life in a way that makes you feel more fulfilled and feel like at least you are growing instead of like you're going in a circle. And a lot of times folks go into alternative things called New Age, which is really quite criminal in a way, because New Age is given to you by the system. And again, being around a good while, going through those and reading these books of New Age and so on, because out of curiosity, I want to know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about it. So if I'm experiencing it in a sense where I'm reading these books and so on and so forth, talking to people who are in it and so on and so forth, I came to the conclusion myself that it was bogus and that it didn't lead anywhere. And a lot of these individuals who were in New Age, I knew over a period of 5 years, and it never excelled. In a lot of cases, they crashed because their tarot cards, their whatever their astrological stuff, the numerology wasn't really helping them. But every so often, they give them a little crumb. I'll stick with it. Some people say, I need more than a crumb. I got to find something else. Or they just give it up and just start to do their own little piecemeal New Age thing. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and we'll pick up on the programming on the next Master Chief, which will be in October. Yes. So, and I'm taking September off again, like I did last year. Very well needed. And I'm taking it off doing sessions. We are constantly doing other things, but it takes a lot of energy to do the sessions and do the forum. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining us again, the 33rd Ask the Chief Forum, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, you're welcome.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
So